This is Simon. He works as a miner to help expand the village and earn a living. But his main purpose in this job is to hunt for artifacts. He's always the first to finish digging, but the girls don't like a dirty guy like Simon. However, his senior Kamina wants him to cheer up and ignore those gossipy women. He takes Simon to his place and suggests that Simon's talented drill should be used for greater things. He believes they've been trapped in this small village for too long and now must try to reach the surface. The group then rides a herd of pigs and rushes to the top of the cave to drill to the surface. But just as the plan is going smoothly, the village chief appears and stops it. They are all caught, and the chief claims that the surface doesn't exist. But Kamina and his father have seen it before. The chief doesn't believe this because Kamina's father was known as a liar who always rambled about dreamy things. He asks why, if Kamina has seen the surface, he's still here, but Kamina remains silent. Their ancestors didn't allow them to break through the ceiling, and anyone who violates this rule is imprisoned. Those who Kamina considered his juniors also abandon him to get food. The chief knows Simon was forced, so he calls him back. Kamina doesn't force him to stay either. Suddenly, an earthquake occurs, causing everyone to take shelter. After it ends, Kamina shouts about whether they plan to live in fear of earthquakes forever, while on the surface there's no ceiling to crush them. But the chief once again opposes and imprisons Kamina. Simon goes back to digging and accidentally discovers something quite large that reacts to the small drill he found today. He excitedly reports to Kamina and urges him to escape, but as soon as they reach the door, the chief blocks them. He swings a sword at Kamina, who doesn't dodge. When the chief misses, he swings too hard and causes the ceiling to collapse. Suddenly, a monster falls straight into the village, and the chief is too scared to move. Kamina takes his sword and boldly challenges the monster. It can speak and mocks him, but suddenly a girl with a gun swings down. Kamina thinks she's from the surface. The three of them follow Simon down the tunnel because Simon needs to get to the thing he found. The girl reveals that she's from a neighboring village, not from the surface. She then finds a good spot to shoot at the monster's source, but Kamina keeps blocking her view, causing her to miss and attracting the monster's attention. Kamina believes that as a man, he should fight directly, but she's a woman. Simon then finds and realizes that the thing he discovered seems to be the head of a robot, and if they use it, they might be able to defeat the creature above. He wants Kamina to pilot it, but Kamina says that since Simon dug it up, he should pilot it, and he believes Simon can do it. Simon inserts the key and activates it. From just ahead, it grows limbs and flies back up. The three face the monster again, but it's still too big for them to handle. It punches the robot into the wall, and just as it's about to crush Simon, he manages to use the robot to save the other two who are trapped on the monster. As they don't know what to do, the monster suddenly hits its own head and falls unconscious. Just as they're feeling excited, the monster bites the robot again. Simon uses all the energy and creates several drills on the robot's body to escape. He's confident that with this weapon they'll win, so he charges forward, piercing the monster's hand and pushing it back to the surface. The monster is defeated, and all three see the surface for the first time. The girl introduces herself as Duko, but suddenly the energy runs out, causing all three to fall. The robot protects them, so they're all safe, just a bit sore. Suddenly, Duko notices two other monsters approaching. The three start running, and Duko forgets to warn them that the previous monster and these ones are part of a group. And there are many more, not just these few. Kamina wants Simon to stay and fight, saying that since they've had the courage to come this far, they shouldn't run away again. Kamina rushes out to challenge the monsters, but Simon manages to save him just in time. Simon still doesn't dare to stay, so Duko has to use her gun to shoot back. They run and shoot for a while until the robot runs out of fuel and Duko runs out of ammo. Luckily, people from her village arrive to support them. Now we know that these monsters are also robots with creatures controlling them from inside. The one that was shot had to abandon its robot, and along with the remaining one, they run away. These controlling creatures are called Ga-men. They attack at dawn and retreat at dusk. She then returns to the village, and Kamina encourages Simon, saying that he tried his best and always came to rescue him when he was in danger. A flamboyant young man named Ron comes to check out the robot and finds it quite interesting as it suits his taste. The two then sit and watch the stars, and Kamina is happy to have fulfilled his promise to his father. Duko tells them the names of the moon and stars. Ron returns and finds this robot interesting too. He notices that Kamina and Simon can't read, so he informs them that humans used to live on the surface, but for some reason had to move underground. However, no one is sure if there are any records of this. Duko introduces Ron to both of them, and he's the weapons maintenance guy. Duko asks Simon to help carry some things. The group then sets off together to return to Duko's village. Her village originally lived underground, but some incidents caused them to move to this new place. When they return to the village, everyone is fascinated by Simon's robot, while Simon and Kamina go to sleep. The next morning, Kamina hears a loud noise and asks Duko about it. He learns that the Gamen are attacking. They seem upset about yesterday's events, so they're attacking for 2 consecutive days. The gun users and Kamina go ahead, letting Simon follow behind. His robot has been repaired by Ron, but when activated, it doesn't start. The 2 Gamen outside have called their senior to come for revenge. Simon recognizes that this vibration is similar to the earthquake that caused his parents' death, so he immediately activates the robot to join the battle. The other robot has gone into the canyon, and Duko has set bombs to crush them with rocks, but it's completely ineffective. Kamina decides they must capture this orange robot. Simon arrives and informs that these are the ones causing the earthquakes. Knowing Simon wants revenge, Kamina advises him to keep a cool head and asks him to take him to the orange one so he can hijack it. As they charge, the blue one attacks. Duko fires a shot to help them avoid the hit and causes it to punch the orange one in the face. Kamina quickly jumps up to infiltrate. Simon drills off one arm of the blue one and helps Kamina get inside the orange one. He manages to drive out the creature inside, but even after getting in, Kamina can't pilot it, so both of them get knocked back. Kamina uses everything he can to try to control the robot, and by some miracle, he manages to pilot it. Kamina charges forward, punching the other 2 away, and calls Simon to wake up, then uses Simon like a ball to throw. When he misses, the other 2 mock them, but Simon has dug a path to return and stab them from behind. Duko thinks Kamina looks pretty cool. Kamina then names his robot and also discovers a skeleton exposed after the battle. Kamina is surprised to see his father's necklace, so he goes down to check and finds his cloak too. Kamina thinks his old man passed away here and is heartbroken. That night, Kamina still pretends he's okay. Duko thinks he must be heartbroken because he went looking for his father only to find he had died. But Simon thinks he's just regretting not being able to go with him. She's glad Kamina seems to be doing alright. The next morning, Duko sees that Kamina has combined parts from the 3 robots into one. She informs them that she's going out on a trip because the Gamen don't seem to be attacking today. During times like these, they prioritize gathering more food. The group goes hunting and gets acquainted with many new creatures. Duko reveals that where the whole village is staying used to be a weapons warehouse. Weapons were what caused them to lose their previous home, and now they're using those same weapons to protect their new home. Duko is considered the village's best sniper, so she gets to use this gun that can shoot both bullets and arrows. She shows Kamina how to use it, and he shoots his first prey on his first try. While picking up the prey, he notices 2 arrows, and the shooter immediately appears. This person introduces himself as Vere and claims to be the captain of the human extermination force. The 2 young men have a battle between sword and knife, but between a well-trained individual and a young man who lived in a cave, the gap is still too large. However, thanks to a sneak attack, Kamina manages to leave a mark on Vere's face. Simon rushes out to rescue his senior, so Roman 6 Rai takes the opportunity to escape back to his Gamen. Kamina also brings out his robot to join the fight, and now it's equipped with additional tools for the two brothers to communicate with each other. The two young men engage in combat again, and experience once more helps Roman 6 Rai dominate. Simon has to intervene to help, and they both use their old trick, but when they're about to sneak attack, Virai turns around and counterattacks. He won't let himself be ambushed twice and then shoots a deadly beam towards the two brothers. Not seeing any trace of them, he knows they've escaped and vows to deal with them next time. Duko thinks something has happened to them, but when the two brothers emerge from the mountain, she sighs in relief. Kamina doesn't understand why Simon ran, and Simon says he was scared and wanted to go back because there are stronger enemies out there. Duko offers to replace Simon in controlling the small robot, but Kamina doesn't allow it because he believes in Simon. The next morning, the whole village decides to join Kamina's group. The team waits for Roman 6 Rai to arrive. He does come and compliments Kamina for not running away, but Kamina still taunts him. When they start fighting, Kamina is repeatedly beaten. Gunfire doesn't affect very much, and he blocks Duko's sniper shots while simultaneously beating Kamina. Seeing his senior being beaten so badly but still trying to stand up, Simon realizes he can't remain weak like this forever. He gets up, and just as Kamina is about to be hit by another beam, Simon rushes out to deflect it. Kamina decides to use a new technique with his junior, fusion. He does this by having Simon stab into his head. Virai finds it ridiculous and wants to shoot another beam, but the two have truly fused and block the beam. Kamina rushes forward, punches off Virai's hat, and puts it on. When Virai draws his sword, Kamina uses 2 drills to destroy it. Virai uses a smoke screen to escape, but Simon doesn't want to chase after him yet. That night, they repair the robot, and Ron finds the location of the enemy's lair through the source point on the robot. Kamina goes to his father's grave to take the cloak and decides to explore the world in his father's place. The group then decides to set out to eliminate Roman 6 Rai's group once and for all. Ron will go with them, and Duko is hesitant about whether to go or not, but the villagers allow her to go, saying they can protect the village themselves. And so, the journey of Kamina's quartet begins. During the journey, Kamina demands Simon practice a more elegant way of transforming, as stabbing into the head every time they fuse is too crude. He keeps throwing rocks at Simon, forcing him to run. Ron examines Simon's robot and finds it special and different from the others. Another group hears the commotion and discovers them causing trouble. They attack and bomb them, thinking Kamina is one of those beast men. Simon is surrounded by 3 others and realizes they're all female. A young man comes to confront Kamina. They think Kamina is a beast man because only beast men can control these robots, but he says he stole it. The 3 girls near Simon then all turn towards Kamina. They introduce themselves as 4 siblings. Because their names are similar, they'll just call the young man the eldest brother, Kai Tan, and the 3 sisters are Glasses, Purple Hair, and Big Grapefruit. Kai Tan doesn't like Kamina and wants his sisters to stay away from him. While they're arguing, Duko and Ron come to mediate. The girls then have to go find food and accidentally discover a fluffy creature lying there. The boys are lying around complaining about hunger, and Kai Tan reveals they're chasing a 16-faced beast man. Suddenly, the girls return with the pink creature. As they're about to eat it, the others wake up and they can talk. There are 16 in total and they run away. Kai Tan realizes this is what they've been hunting and follows them. They run back to their robots to fight, and there are 16 robots here. While the 4 siblings buy time, Kamina climbs onto the robot and Simon wants to fuse, but Kamina refuses the old way of fusion. The others also fuse. Simon wants Kamina to stop being stubborn, but he insists. Simon thinks about why Kamina is doing this and understands. He tries to fuse but is blocked by the others. Kai Tan is about to do something when Duko comes to him for a ride. Simon, after struggling, manages to reach Kamina and then fuses by jumping into the air to look cool. After fusing, Kamina wants to show them that quality will beat quantity. But because they're hungry, they're still at a disadvantage. The creature that has been following Simon since the village now tears off its own tail for Kamina and Simon to eat. Although it's just a small piece, it's enough to change the situation. When the others separate to spin in a circle, Kamina uses his drill to pierce them all at once. They're not dead yet and run away. Kai-Tan's 4 siblings rush over to celebrate, while Ron realizes he'll have to stay up tonight to repair. The group of 4 siblings decides to split from Kamina's group because neither wants to be subordinate to the other. A few days later, the group continues their journey, with Duko and Kamina arguing throughout. They accidentally cause the ground to collapse, dragging Simon and Ron down with them. When they wake up, they find themselves in what seems to be a village with a primitive level of development. The villagers think the robot is an electric god, and that they are divine messengers. The place seems quite poor, so there isn't much food. They even request Duko to wear more modest clothes. News spreads that someone in the village has given birth to triplets, causing the population to exceed 50, so they must choose 2 people to eliminate. A village boy comes to ask the group about the situation above, and Kamina bluntly says there are no electric gods or heavenly people here. That thing is just a robot. But the boy reveals that they only started thinking of it as an electric god when the new religious leader arrived. Just as he's speaking, the leader appears. He introduces himself as the religious leader. Kamina shows attitude towards him, but he only asks the boy, Ro-Si, to go to sleep for tomorrow's ceremony. Kamina has an uneasy feeling about him. The next morning, Ro-Si discovers the secret about the electric god. It's actually a robot, but the religious leader stops him. Kamina now realizes why he hates the leader. He's just like the village chief from his past. The selection ceremony then takes place. 52 villagers draw lots, and 2 children are chosen. The old man brainwashes the village, saying being chosen means being selected by the god to ascend to the higher realm. But in reality, they're being sent to the dangerous and barren surface. Kamina refuses to take these 2 kids with them. Ro-Si is angry at Kamina's words and claims he's not a divine messenger at all. But the leader forbids violence in the village. Suddenly, a robot falls from the surface, forcing the 2 brothers to enter their robot to fight back. During the battle, the statue robot rushes forward, knocks the enemy robot towards the waterfall, pushes it down, and then uses the robot to cover up the spot. Kamina still doesn't like this village and the religious leader, but they can't cause more trouble, so they reluctantly agree to leave. That night, Ro-Si asks the leader about the truth, and he reveals that the religion was created only to keep the population at 50 due to limited food resources. The 2 chosen kids were selected because they have no family. The next day, the kids set out, and Ro-Si also leaves to find a new place for the whole village to live without being bound by rules. All 3 are welcomed by Kamina's group. On their continued journey, they still can't reach the source point because it keeps moving. Duko feels unwell due to the stench. More Gaimen fall down, so they fight first and think later. After the fight, one escapes, and Ro-Si thinks they should chase it to follow it to the source point. But they chase it until they get lost in the fog. An old man appears and shows the group the way. The group is led to a resort, and the owner of this place knows of Kamina's reputation. He and the group are warmly welcomed and well fed. The group also meets Kai-Tan's 3 sisters again. When asked, they learn that Kai-Tan is away on business. All 3 were chasing a Gaimen and got lost in the fog, and were also led here by an old man. The owner then invites the group to try the hot springs. Kamina hears that hot springs are like paradise with breasts and peaches, but the experience is just bathing with other men. The 2 young men are discussing their dream of going to the moon when they suddenly hear the girls playing with each other's bodies on the other side. Kamina wants to see at all costs. He asks Simon to drill a hole so he can find another spot. But when Simon drills a hole, he overhears Duko saying she sees him as someone who lacks confidence and always relies on Kamina. But she believes that when Simon grows up, he'll be a reliable support because he always helps her in difficult times. Hearing this, Simon feels comforted enough to fill the hole. Ro-C is now investigating because this place is too suspicious. Kamina has climbed up the wall, but before he can take a look, suddenly the entire bathhouse transforms into a giant robot. The owner turns out to be a beast person who hunts at night. Ron has prepared the robot for the two brothers, so they enter to fight. The owner uses the captured girls as hostages. Kamina is frustrated because of the covering, so the owner offers to remove it if he exits the robot. He chooses Desire and gets out, but is shocked to find everyone in swimsuits. The robot has been taken away by those they've encountered before. The robot runs to where Ro-C is, so he takes the opportunity to climb in. Kamina jumps onto a gamen, while Duko finds a gun somewhere and shoots down the cage. Both sides run towards each other, and Duko punches Kamina in the face for his stupid move earlier. Meanwhile, Simon and Ron are about to be crushed when the others manage to break into the control room. The owner arrives and uses a remote to tighten the girls' towels. Kamina is restrained, but the boy traveling with the group gets the remote and turns it. Seeing it loosen, Kamina asks the boy to turn it all the way, thinking he's about to get a view, but there are swimsuits under the towels. Frustrated, Kamina calls Simon to get everyone out. They all squeeze into the small robot and head to the large robot Ro-C is piloting. Once fused, Kamina uses the glasses on him to split a gamen in half. Duko is so happy she accidentally exposes herself and runs away. Suddenly, a beam of light appears and Vere officially returns. He comes to reclaim his hat, but asks them to put clothes on first. Both sides then engage in battle, with Vere saying that dealing with naked monkeys would ruin his reputation, as he's a soldier of the capital. Simon realizes the capital seems to be their base. Vere claims the capital is the only civilization and has a king ruling it. After fighting for a while, Vere's weapon is once again destroyed, but he remains confident because he has the entire capital behind him. A bullet flies in, and from afar, a fortress appears. As it gets closer, it gets bigger, and Ron realizes this is the source point they've been chasing. When they arrive, the fortress is even larger than they thought, and Vere confirms this is one of the 4 heavenly kings. Kamina finds it more interesting and tries to act tough, so the king gives him a few shots. Despite the damage and many people advising him to give up, he stubbornly refuses. Somehow, the two brothers manage to repair the robot, and Kamina uses the pressure from an explosion to fly onto the ship and kick Vere in the mouth. Duko's group is sent 3 gamen by the Heavenly King, but a robot falls down and takes care of all 3 at once. The person inside is someone the group knows. The Heavenly King now has Kamina and is about to tear off his legs when Kamina is saved by a group of robots. This turns out to be Duko's village brother, along with Kaitan. Duko explains that they've all learned from Kamina to steal robots to pilot, and more people are coming to help. Kamina doesn't give up, but Simon manages to persuade him to back off and hand over control. He lures the entire fortress to a cliff edge and then collapses it, causing the fortress to fall. He manages to cling to the cliff face and return to everyone. That night, the group meets and gains new members. Kamina decides that tomorrow the fortress might return, so they'll try to capture it and turn it into their base, with Simon as the key player. During the planning, the reason Simon is chosen is because his small robot has the ability to take control, so he'll have to handle capturing the fortress. Duko then wants Kamina to be less reckless because there haven't been many consequences so far, but now they need to be more cautious. A while later, a volcano suddenly erupts, and Kamina still sees this as the first challenge for their grand gang. Duko later comes to encourage Simon so he won't worry too much. He's about to tell her something but stops. She then goes to Ron to get the newly modified gun barrel. She also goes to find Kamina and expresses her feelings for him. He promises to repay her tenfold when they return. However, Simon sees this and runs away heartbroken. He tries to reassure himself that it's not his business. Kamina finds him and reminds him about preparing to set out. The gang gathers to discuss the plan and then sets off. Kamina feels nostalgic because when they first set out, there were only 2 of them and a rat pig. Duko points out that she was there too, but Kamina hadn't let her into the gang at that time. Simon tries to keep his mind focused to control the robot, but looking at the energy ring, it's clear what state his mind is in. When they arrive at the place where the fortress fell, they wait to ambush, but Kamina guesses their plan and has rocks thrown down. The Heavenly King throws everyone up to fight. Viray wants to reclaim his hat from Kamina, but realizes Simon isn't there. Simon then charges out and stabs straight into the fortress's head. Duko provides covering fire, and the new members try to prove themselves, but Simon is still not finished. Ron realizes Simon seems to be troubled because the robot's power depends on his spirit. The Heavenly King decides to bring out his robot to fight in order to keep the fortress. Kamina asks his comrades to hold Viray back while he rushes to Simon and punches him to snap out of it. Simon regains his senses and is close to capturing the fortress. Suddenly, Kamina is unexpectedly stabbed by the Heavenly King. He cuts off his legs and stabs straight into Kamina's location, causing him to scream and lose signal. The surge of emotion causes Simon to take over the fortress and makes the volcano erupt violently. Viray is knocked away. Kamina is still alive and punches Simon to wake him up again. He announces to everyone that the fortress has been captured, but the Heavenly King would rather destroy it than let them have it. Kamina calls Simon back to unite and finish the job. Simon abandons controlling the ship and returns to his senior, and they both recover and advance. A bunch of enemies charge in but are pierced by multiple drills that grow out. They throw 2 pairs of glasses and charge with a giant drill, defeating the Heavenly King. After their victory, everyone is happy until they realize Kamina has collapsed from exhaustion. Meanwhile, the king and the other Heavenly Kings are disappointed by the defeated Heavenly King's failure. A female Heavenly King chooses to avenge her good friend who died. A week passes, and the entire fortress has been repaired for everyone to live and train together. However, Kai Tan isn't satisfied with Simon because he lacks calmness and always tries to work alone. Simon believes he alone can control the combined form. He thinks he's the reason Kamina lost his life, so he'll try to fight in his senior's place. He's rough and quick-tempered with everyone, but Simon isn't the only one affected. Duko is the second person to suffer. She sees many people don't trust Simon's leadership and they need a replacement leader. A friend from the village advises Duko to keep an eye on Simon. That day, the enemy attacks again, so Simon and Ro-Si go into battle. Simon takes control again and now fights recklessly like Kamina used to do. But the emotional outburst causes Simon to overload, making his robot detach and fall straight into a ravine. The Ga-men chase after him. The others arrive and hear the story from Ro-Si. Simon wakes up and walks around, realizing this seems to be a waste disposal site. Something is just dropped down, and he sees a keyhole similar to his drill, so he tries to open it with his key. Inside is a girl. She's surprised to be outside and meet a human instead of a beast person. She introduces herself as Naya. Suddenly, Ga-men appear behind them, forcing Simon to lead Naya away. He reaches his robot but overloads again, so he wants to stay behind and let Naya escape. But she wants both of them to escape together. Luckily, Duko and Kai Tan arrive to rescue them. He's brought back to the ship, and everyone is surprised by Naya. It's her first time seeing people as she's always been with her father before. She seems to have angered her father but doesn't understand why she was thrown into the ravine. Simon believes his robot has abandoned him too, so he feels powerless to avenge his senior. The ship is suddenly attacked. Naya recognizes this Heavenly King's voice. Duko has to go out to fight, but Naya runs out and orders the female Heavenly King to lower her weapons, by the order of the first princess. The Heavenly King isn't sure, so she decides to return to confirm and come back later. Naya's revelation of information makes Kai Tan decide to interrogate her for more information. Meanwhile, the king informs the female heavenly king that he has abandoned Naya and gives her another chance to deal with both the enemy and Naya. She meets Virai again, and he wants to follow to avenge his old master. But she considers Virai incompetent and tells him to get lost. Meanwhile, Nia was taken for interrogation by being given good food, but no one was able to get any information from her, so Kitten brought her to Simon to deal with. He told her about the bad things her father had done. At this time, Rosie was repairing the fuel furnace with Ron. Ron believed that the robot didn't listen to Simon because he no longer had the will to fight. Hearing this, Nia understood why everyone here seemed to hate her because of Kamina. She thought Simon shouldn't rely too much on the dead, but should be stronger, because when he helped her, he had fought and struggled alone. But Duko thought Nia didn't understand anything, so she shouldn't pretend to be knowledgeable because she knew exactly who was responsible for Kamina's death. Duko left. A while later, the Heavenly King came again and wanted to meet Nia first. Since the ship couldn't leave yet, they had to hand her over to buy time and possibly avoid a battle. Nia went before her, and she immediately told Nia that she had been abandoned by her father king, and now she would take Nia's life to atone. Nia tried to reason with her, but obviously to no avail. Simon tried to use the robot but couldn't, so he had to run up himself. But others also brought out robots because they wouldn't forgive someone who abandoned their children. The whole group then rushed to push her off the ship. She still fought against everyone alone, but Ron had activated the fortress, causing her to be hit and forcing Virai to come to her rescue. He still didn't know Kamina was dead, so he swore to take revenge next time. Nia thanked them for saving her, but they were happy that she was still safe. Nia then brought food to Simon, but he refused to eat. The Heavenly Kings reported back to the king and wanted to replace this Heavenly King in battle, but the king didn't allow it. Both Heavenly Kings were worried about Simon's small robot. Meanwhile, Nia wondered why Simon's robot was thrown here, and they thought he was now like autistic, so he would soon be sent back to the village. If he couldn't stand up on his own, he would no longer belong here. While Nia went to encourage Simon, Kitten received a distress call from some girls. Kitten was as girl crazy as his senior, so he followed despite finding it very suspicious. After firing a few shots, the whole ship thought they had won, so they let the girls on board without any precautions, only to find out that these girls were in cahoots with a Heavenly King and captured the whole group. They aimed for Nia and Simon. When Nia heard that a Heavenly King wanted to meet, she went along to negotiate, while the whole ship was captured to await trial. This Heavenly King was Guam. He made Nia understand everything that had happened to her, because the king viewed childbirth as a pleasure and didn't like any child with self-awareness, only wanting children like living dolls. He wanted her to stay and become the village head and train girls to offer to the king, but she refused. Meanwhile, the whole gang was trying to find a way out, but only Simon was calmly digging a path with the key. Duko remembered what Kamina had once said, that he always tried to appear strong just so Simon wouldn't look down on him. He had dug out, and the robot also came to pick up its original owner. When old Guam heard that the small robot was lost, he ordered the fortress to be turned upside down, and if necessary, destroy everything. Nia believed in Simon, so he demanded to execute Simon first, but she kept her faith, so he demanded to execute her too. Suddenly, the old guide from before appeared and pushed the gun away, and Simon had also arrived. He saved Nia and accepted himself as well as the fact that Kamina was gone. Old Guam had taken out the robot and attacked the ship. Rosie brought out the big robot to fight back, but was bitten by the old man's robot. Simon had returned to his body and started to fight back against him. He used the move that he and Kamina had used before and defeated Guam, but he wasn't dead and still managed to escape. Nia asked him to take her to where she was abandoned. They realized that besides her, there were many others who were abandoned. They made graves for all, and Simon decided that from now on, he would be himself instead of becoming Kamina. They saw that he had risen up, so they chose him as the new leader of the gang. Guam returned in disgrace while the other one was still not back. He saw Simon's group heading to a place near the sea and saw that the Heavenly King had been lucky as water was her strength. Meanwhile, Simon's group had reached the sea and wanted to stay and play for a while, but Duco didn't like wasting time with games. Ron said he needed time to help the fortress move on water, so they could play until it was ready. The whole group went to play, and Nia's presence gradually made Duco lose points, from attractiveness to sports and other beach games. When Ron finished the installation, the gang set off. On the way, they discovered torpedoes from the other Heavenly King. She was still bitter and brought troops for revenge. The ship shot down all the torpedoes, but the second wave wasn't as lucky because the Heavenly King had joined the battle. Only Simon's combined robot was waterproof, so he had to fight her alone, but underwater was still her strength. While he was struggling, Roman 6 Rai had driven the ship to pull the entire fortress underwater. The fortress began to flood, and Nia wanted them to stay calm because Simon would do something. He activated his power and used the drill to drill up towards the ship. The Heavenly King couldn't keep up with the speed, and so he crashed into her ship and pushed both to the surface. The Heavenly King rushed to take Nia hostage and forced the ship to shoot Simon to release her. But Duco took a gun and aimed at Du. She thought Duco would shoot her to save Simon, but she shot the Heavenly King's shoulder instead. As soon as Nia was released, the Heavenly King was shot down. Viray tried to do something, but Simon drilled his ship to pieces. The king immediately heard that another person had fallen, while Viray was frustrated. That evening, Nia asked Duco to cut her hair. While cutting, Duco wondered why Nia closed her eyes earlier, and she said she trusted Du. Their previously bad relationship had now changed positively. A few days later, Nia came to Simon because she wanted to find something to do on the ship. While puzzled, Simon was pulled away by Duco to eat because he always skipped meals, which could be a problem if they suddenly encountered enemies. Since eating was also a task, Nia chose to cook for the whole ship. She went to the kitchen and everyone was eager to eat, but right at this moment, the enemy attacked. Another Heavenly King had come out to fight, and Rosie was sick, so Duco would co-pilot with Simon. As she opened the cockpit door, memories of Kamina flooded back, but she forced herself to move on. The ship was now in extreme difficulty as the enemy specialized in air combat and the ship had no way to deal with this type of enemy. Simon wanted to try, so he launched up and used the drill to swing from one plane to another. He tried to combine one as a jet, and it was effective. All the members below felt empowered and fought back more strongly. Simon once again faced Viray, and Du, wanting to fire a few shots, fell, forcing Simon to dive after her. Viray chased after and realized only Simon and Duco were here instead of Kamina. He asked where Kamina was and learned the truth, and that he had always lost to Simon. He wanted Simon to fight a proper battle, so Simon piloted the robot alone to fight. During the fight, the Heavenly King interrupted, using Duco to threaten Simon, making him see Viray as a coward too. Viray dropped his weapons because he didn't want to win this way. Meanwhile, the ship below had climbed a stone pillar to approach the enemy ship. With just one kick, the enemy ship was severely damaged. Simon had saved Du, and the ship had captured the engine from the Heavenly King's ship. He returned bitterly and swore to make Roman 6 Rai pay. Du was then treated. Nia came to visit and pulled Simon to eat the dish she cooked. Suddenly, Rosie ran out and recounted what had happened. He had tried Nia's dish and it was terrible. But he forced himself to eat to make her happy, and now he was like this. Everyone on the ship could barely swallow, but Simon found it delicious. Viray had now been captured to face punishment, but he wanted to know the reason they had to war with humans. The king took Viray into a room and showed him that beast men were not superior to humans, but were all put through a hibernation process to develop. He was willing to tell more if Viray accepted the risk. But now he had nothing to lose, so he agreed. Simon's side also had to quickly prepare for the battle, as this one seemed to be very big. The king had sent out the previous heavenly king to battle, and he also saw humans as a threat. Although humans were confined underground, they still rose up to fight. The enemy ship appeared, and Simon's ship had been upgraded and could now fly using the core they obtained earlier. Everyone went out to fight, and the 4 kitten siblings would fight together on the battlefield this time. Simon and Rose C quickly set out, and the kitten siblings could now unite to fight. While they were evenly matched, the fortress was captured by Old Guam from the ground. Simon had asked Kitten and others to handle things down there while he would take care of things up here. Simon used a power breakthrough to launch drills and deal with all the smaller foes at once. He handed over control to Rose C, but the Heavenly King now showed himself. Simon and Rose C were quickly caught and about to face the saw blade from him, but suddenly an army arrived to reinforce them. They were humans who had followed Kamina's idea of robbing robots and now came to support. They shot down all of the Heavenly King's troops. He intended to use all his strength to drag Simon along, but was hit by the entire ship, causing both him and the ship to perish. The ship's wreckage fell onto Old Guam, but after the explosion, he was unaffected. He ran to the capital and spun it to create a vortex. Many people who didn't know rushed in only to be destroyed. The ship couldn't communicate, so Nia used a projection to stop them, believing Simon would turn the situation around. They realized they hadn't seen Simon for a while, but he was now drilling from below and piercing straight up to where Old Guam was. However, the armor was still too hard, so he was pushed back, but thanks to that hit, the drill had gotten in. He rotated the drill in the opposite direction, quickly dissipating the vortex Old Guam had created, and thus all the Heavenly Kings were destroyed. But suddenly, all the houses in the capital began falling to the ground, forcing the gang to run. However, they suddenly detected a signal similar to Simon's robot, so he flew up and saw the king. He was about to rush in when the entire capital turned into a robot and raised its hand to block him. The king flicked once, and the robot flicked back, sending Simon flying. Nia wanted to meet her father, but Rose C knew this wouldn't be easy, as he had released a bunch of obstacles to block the way. Kitten and others would clear the path for him, so he should remember to give the king a few punches for them. The whole ship followed Simon while the army was dealing with the remaining enemies. They went through a gap on the right side, but the king still noticed and delivered a blow there. They still used firepower to pierce through and then launched the sword carrying Simon straight to where the king was. The ship could no longer hold on, so they decided to let it go out in a blaze of glory. After triggering the explosion, everyone used the skeletal frame to escape and detonated everything. Although Simon had reached the king's location, he still had to face his old enemy, Virat, first. Roman 6 Rai thought he had been enhanced, but in combat, he was still weaker and was defeated after a few moves. Vari had only been modified to become someone who would live forever to pass on the story of the king's victory. Nia met her father again and wanted to know why he was massacring people. He claimed he was trying to create a world where humans could live, as beastmen were physically weaker than humans. So he, a strong individual, had to suppress humans so beastmen could have a place to live. He acknowledged Simon's great strength, but said it wasn't enough. He brought out a robot similar to the one Simon was using, which was the reason for the 2 identical signals. He quickly attacked with dizzying speed. He knew someone else once had this power like Simon, but was defeated by him. Simon used a giant drill technique, but the king's robot bit it and broke it, then pinned Simon down with a bunch of drills. Simon didn't give up and continued to charge, using his hands to hold the king back to separate the head and take control. But the king caught him with one hand, saying Simon couldn't win with this body. Yet Simon didn't give up and kept fighting, so the king transformed into a giant drill. In the clash of drills, Simon won, so the king left the robot to fight hand to hand. When Nia woke up, Simon was still in hand-to-hand combat. The king still had strength while Simon didn't, but Simon used the key to pierce the king, causing it to burst with power and leaving a hole in him. admitting defeat. The king told Simon that his responsibility would be great, because when humans reach 1 million, the moon will become the messenger of hell. The capital collapsed, but Nia and Simon returned safely. Thanks to the capital's collapse, humans could now return to the surface. But many questions arose about the power Simon was using and the truth behind the king's words. The world was temporarily at peace for 7 years, but only until the king's warning quickly became reality. At this time, Simon became governor and was swamped with paperwork. Nia became Simon's flag bearer. Ron became the Minister of Science and successfully launched a rocket to the moon. Kitten thought the moon mission was nonsense, but they still needed to pay attention to what the king had said. For now, they would only investigate, not do anything yet. Rosie asked the twins about population data, and if it exceeded 1 million, they needed to prepare quickly. But because they hadn't done a good job, Rosie was very angry and said that those who left to avoid politics were better than those who couldn't do the job but still arrogantly sat there. The Kitten group had dinner at the restaurant of Simon's former village chief. Kitten's younger sister had married and was about to have her first child. Nia came here to tell them about Simon finally taking the initiative to propose to her, so she needed some advice. The 2 older sisters instructed her to express all her feelings and immediately gave her the phone to do it right away. Simon had visited Kamina's statue and remembered when Duko gave up politics to wander. He received a call from Nia accepting his proposal and was overjoyed. At this moment, Rosie informed him that Virai was opposing again just to fight him. But the 2 children from years ago had grown up and could pilot robots to handle him instead of Simon. Virai, with his shabby robot that hadn't been repaired in 7 years, couldn't win the fight. He was captured, and Simon thought he was truly holding a grudge. The war had ended, but he still wanted to oppose. However, Virai revealed that besides those who wanted to live on the surface, there were also people who were used to living underground, and what Simon was doing now was similar to what the king did years ago. Rosie interrupted, making Simon think about this issue. Simon blamed Rosie for not mentioning this, but he did it to find the 1 millionth person. What would happen if they found them? Would he expel them like his village did before? Rosie had a large research room to study how to maintain this government. He and many others had tried to create a biological computer, and everyone was fiercely loyal to Rosie. That night, Kitten's sister's child was born, but it was the 1,000,000th person, and the moon immediately dropped a giant robot that devastated the city. Nia's body suddenly had a strange phenomenon, causing her to scream and disappear. The robot had no face, and the old robots sent to fight it were almost useless against it. Swords and bullets were all absorbed by it. Simon had to go into battle despite Rosie's objections, believing that as a leader, he had a duty to protect the people. He used his drill to add more energy and destroyed the robot, but its debris exploded wherever it touched, causing even more damage. Rosie had to send people to quell the chaos first. Suddenly, Nia appeared and revealed that she was an ancient race and realized that this planet had too much energy beyond the permissible level, so it needed to be eliminated. They tried to find Nia's location but couldn't. She then disappeared, and citizens continuously called to complain about house fires and threats from Nia. Everyone had to keep answering to reassure the people. Rosie had conducted an experiment and maintained the king's consciousness with just a head. Simon kept searching for Nia, but Gimme and Derry, the 2 kids from before, came to stop him, worried that his flying around would make people think something serious was happening. He decided to use a small robot and let them take his body back. He searched everywhere for familiar people but couldn't find her. When he reached the lake, he accidentally met her again. She began to say incomprehensible things and viewed him as the owner of that key and also the one who would destroy the universe. On Rosie's side, he asked the king about the confusing things, and the king explained that the energy Simon used was the evolutionary power within each person. Nia's people were those who feared this ability, so those who awakened this power, like him, had to be protectors of humanity. The reason he pushed humans underground was because he had failed and was imposed laws by that race. He pushed humans underground to prevent them from developing and then being annihilated. But humans' fighting instinct was too great and caused the current situation. Nia also explained to Simon and believed that if 1,000,000 humans awakened, it would be a great threat to them. In 3 weeks, the moon would leave its orbit and crash into Earth, and that would be the end of everything. Rosie didn't want anyone to know, but Kitten ran in to remind him to watch TV because the people had heard everything Nia had said. Nia said she had awakened the genes of the new race, so she would give up being human and let the 2 robots handle it themselves. The entire army went into battle, and Ron said this robot had an outer protective layer, and when that shield was broken, it would scatter into fragments as seen before. Simon rushed in to fight and let it scatter. They would use guns to shoot down the fragments before they fell. Both robots were destroyed, but if there were more, this method wouldn't work. People began to curse the government despite Rosie's attempts to explain. He knew things would get worse and needed someone to take responsibility, so he decided to imprison Simon. The people unanimously blamed Simon and demanded that he take responsibility. Rosie's reason was that because people had seen him talking and fighting with Nia, they now viewed him as a dictator like the previous king. Before, they were bound by gods, now by laws. He believed that to achieve results, there must be sacrifices, and Kamina's departure made them stronger, so Kamina's sacrifice could be seen as something to celebrate. Simon saw that Rosie had truly changed and was now no different from the cult leader in his village years ago. When others heard that Simon was arrested, they thought Rosie had his reasons. Ron's science team was trying to improve robots for Derry and Gimme so they could fight enemies like Simon did, and Ron suddenly came up with a way to improve them. After digging through the secret information left by the king, Rosie found a vast area considered the king's trump card. Simon was brought to court and sentenced to death. Kitten knew Rosie had arranged this trial and wondered what they would do to save humanity, even after sentencing Simon to death. Suddenly, Nia appeared before Simon and said that in 2 weeks, humanity would be desperate and wish to live. As she left, news came of an alien robot attack. This time not just 2 robots like before. Simon wanted to fight, and if they feared he'd escape his death sentence, they could plant a bomb in his robot. Rosie relented and let Simon go into battle. Kitten's sister sat in the robot with explosives to prevent Simon from taking reckless actions. She volunteered, believing Simon would return safely. Rosie announced to the people that Simon would fight under supervision, and if anything went wrong, the government had prepared 36 shelters worldwide for the people. Those left out would be taken off Earth temporarily by a ship Rosie found from the old king. The people regained their faith. Simon rushed into battle with the robots, trying to lure them out of the city. But they cornered him and tried to lead him back, so he braked and burrowed underground to ambush the commander robot. However, before he could touch it, he was surrounded by the others. He used all his strength to launch giant drills and exhausted himself, but Derry and Gimme's group came to help. Thanks to Ron's modifications, they were able to destroy the commander robot. Upon returning to the city, Rosie announced that Simon's robot would be destroyed and he would be executed. Kitten arrived just as Simon was being taken away. He was angry that his sister had been strapped with a bomb, but his sister defended Rosie. Simon was taken to prison and met Roman 6 Rye again, who found it amusing that Simon had gone from hero to criminal in an instant. That night, Ron accidentally discovered something interesting, so the next morning he called Rosie and requested a meeting. Meanwhile, Simon was despised by the criminals in prison. Just after showering, he was attacked by a thug who was a man of the heavenly king in the sky. But Vuri came to save him, though his purpose was to witness Simon's misery firsthand. The 2 young men were about to fight while the prisoners cheered. Vuri, with his immortal body, let Simon hit him until morning without effect. The thug, frustrated, rushed in but was punched twice, so when the guard came, everyone blamed both of them. Meanwhile, Rosie was quite shocked to hear some information from Ron. Kitten discovered that the ship evacuating citizens was being loaded with a bunch of animals. He hid and caught the guy with glasses to ask why, but Rosie came to answer instead. It was because when the moon collides, the entire Earth's surface will be destroyed. Those hiding underground will die while those on the ship will live. The animals would be food estimated to last for a year. Kitten suggested using the whole ship to crash into the moon, but this method was too risky. Kitten visited his niece and brother-in-law, who knew that Kitten had resigned. It was a difficult time, so he wanted Kitten to spend more time with his sister and niece. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the robots attack again. Now that Ron has improved them, one bullet takes out one robot, but there are still too many for the Gimme group to handle. Kitten has told everyone to go ahead while he stays behind to protect his granddaughter's future. As Kitten is in a tough spot, his old teammates arrive to help. The girl who used to be on the engineering team has brought Kitten's robot, now upgraded. Rosie has piloted the spaceship up to use its shield to temporarily protect the city. He asks everyone to try to save as many people as possible in the next 30 minutes because they will evacuate to space. Kitten thinks Rosie's ideals are too boring, so he demands the key back to go find Simon. Since Rosie can't focus on anything else now, he reluctantly hands it over. Meanwhile, Simon realizes they've been abandoned. Suddenly, Nia appears and tells them what will happen to Earth. This is the despair she mentioned before. At this moment, Doko returns to help Simon. Nia leaves, and Rosie manages to save only 1/5 of the population. But their escape to space is just a trap set by the aliens who have been waiting for them there. All this time, Doko has been in a remote countryside teaching children. The kids are taught about Simon and Kamina's liberation efforts, with Doko's picture in the book, making them suspect she's the heroine from the story. She taught the kids many things and helped the less sociable ones make friends. Recently, when she saw Simon in trouble, she didn't know what trouble the people at home had caused. She then evacuated with the islanders, but one child was missing. The lost child was taken hostage by 2 criminals demanding food. Doko had to return, suit up, and come back to save the child while shooting at the robbers' robots, successfully capturing them. She receives a message from Rosie asking her to return, but she'll only go back to criticize the politics he's established. The students run to her, knowing she's the person from the book, but she promises to reclaim the sky for them and return to check their homework. Upon returning to the city, she asks Kitten for Simon's location and goes to rescue him. He decides to save Virai too, needing his cooperation now for a future rematch. Kitten and his group arrive to give him the key, and they decide to blow up the moon. The whole group brings Simon back to the robot, and he wants Virai to co-pilot with him. Despite being beaten by this robot before, Virai is ready to pilot. The group heads to space to support Rosie, and Virai will help Simon reach his ultimate form. With just one move, they defeat countless enemies, but a shot from the moon forces Simon to block it with his drill. They discover a cannon, so Simon will go to destroy it while Kitten and his army protect the ship. The new generation, like Gimme, is determined not to let their seniors steal the show. Rosie realizes the ship's shield also depends on emotions. Recognizing his past mistakes, he decides to focus all energy on the shield to keep the people safe. Simon and Roman 6 gather ammunition from the cannons below and throw it back. Suddenly, the large ship disperses and pulls in their ship and Simon. Ron has an idea. Since this ship is like the former capital, his plan will surely work. Simon uses all his strength to charge at the ship and merges with it, breaking both cages in the process. A giant robot appears on the battlefield, so the other 2 cages also merge and charge. But Simon and Roman 6 defeat the combined enemy with one punch, sending it into a space rift. Now they just need to push the moon back to its original orbit, but it's not easy. Suddenly, the power awakens the king's head, and he tells them that the moon is also one of his weapons. He instructs them to go to the moon's core and use Simon's robot, which should be sufficient. He left the robot behind while you and Roman 6 Rai went inside. Rose C chose to prioritize saving people, so if they couldn't stop it by a certain point, he would make the ship leave. Just as they were about to enter, Simon encountered Nia here. She was still obstructing them, saying that if they intended to stop the moon, they would have to kill her. Varai was about to do so when the king called to stop him, warning that damaging Nia's body would create a significant explosion. Simon had communicated mentally with Nia, knowing she still wore the ring he gave her and always appeared when he was most desperate to seek his help. So if she still believed in the future, she would avoid it. Simon recklessly drove the drill in, and she did indeed dodge. The moon shattered and transformed into a ship to fly back into orbit. Nia revealed that her opposition had caused the alien race to decide to fight to the death, meaning the war was not yet over. Simon wanted to win in order to reclaim Nia. She would be called back to the aliens' headquarters, but she still believed in the small possibility that he would be able to bring her back. Rose C felt that in the end, he couldn't surpass Simon. Simon and the entire ship successfully returned to Earth together. A week passed, and Varai was recognized by the Council as a member of the team. Rose C had left to rebuild Earth, so Ron would be the one to implement the strategy. Ron's explanation of the current situation was too difficult to understand, so he could only summarize it in a few sentences. The moon ship was beginning to search for the location where the alien race was hiding. Rose C had returned to his former village and met the old religious leader. The two had a pleasant conversation, and Simon wanted to go find Rose C and bring him back because, according to Kai Tan's sister, he had been acting strangely lately. He had entered a deep part of the village, while Simon and the sister went to Rose C's village because, as he had once said, the whole village was half of his heart. Rose C was about to end his life because he had nearly sacrificed hundreds of thousands of people, a sin too great for him to bear. The king saw Simon accelerating and helped him by teleporting him straight to Rose C. Simon rushed out and punched Rose C in the face, just as Kamina had once punched him, saying that everyone makes mistakes, so there's no reason to punish oneself. He believed Rose C had done the impossible, so he should come back with him, and there was someone who needed to see him more. The three of them then left, and Rose C felt quite nostalgic about this cockpit. Upon returning, they heard that the king had determined the hiding place was in a different dimension, and he could teleport them as he had just teleported Simon. Simon could go but was worried about Earth. Rose C would stay behind to defend it. Kai Tan went to his sister's house to inform her, and she was understanding about letting her husband go on the gang's final mission. They then brought back the real moon to prevent Earth from being affected. The team then got dressed, and the old man brought the flag of the former Great Gang. They were confident to set off, and Simon had the robot combined with the moon ship. He and the core members of the gang were ready to embark on the final battle. Simon then began to think about Nia so the king could start teleporting them. When they had locked onto the target and were ready to go, Simon recited a speech to boost everyone's morale. After traveling through space, the team arrived in the new dimension and met Nia there. She was very happy that Simon had kept his promise, and now he just needed to win to bring her back. He knew this was just a projection, so he teleported again, but the situation was still not favorable. The alien race had discovered them and sent down 2 ships. Simon also deployed his forces. The others would handle the smaller ones while he used the entire robot ship to try to drill into the enemy ship. But it wasn't enough, so the king let him combine with his moon ship. But the energy required to maintain it was immense, so Simon might be able to use it. Everyone decided to buy time for Simon so he could charge enough energy and bring a larger drill here. While fighting, the enemy ship began to move. Simon still needed 10 more minutes to charge fully. Duco began to find it strange that this group couldn't be this weak, so he ordered a full retreat. Wanted to go rescue their comrades. Kai Tan wanted to go along, but they didn't allow it. A core member of the gang had fallen, causing 2 others to lose their calm and charge in. A barrage of missiles headed towards the ship, forcing the entire ship to try to shoot down each missile. But the two who rushed into the enemy formation had also exhausted themselves, and they left some final words for Simon before deciding to sacrifice themselves. Then, space gates suddenly appeared and dropped huge missiles. Duco destroyed the first one, Darai destroyed the second one but damaged the robot, and another core member used their body to block the third one. Gimmai came to save his childhood friend but got stuck, forcing the twins to go and bring them both back. These two brothers then chose to stay behind and sacrifice themselves to drag along a lot of enemies. Simon vowed not to forget this moment and was now ready to join the battle. However, suddenly the process failed, causing the entire ship to fall and sink into the sea. Surprisingly, there was a sea in this space. Ron immediately explained that this place had been condensed, making it look like a sea. Attempts to fire cannons resulted in the shells disintegrating. The king revealed that this was a place that absorbed energy. The more it absorbed, the denser it became. Simon decided to use a lot of energy to push the ship up before they were crushed by the pressure down here, but those above rushed down to push them back. This dire situation forced Kai-Tan to join the battle, even though his robot hadn't been properly repaired. Duco and the young pilot couple also insisted on following Kai-Tan, making it impossible for him to ignore their wishes. After clearing quite a bit, they discovered something strange. The king informed them that these were people from different spaces coming to challenge this race, and the battle here was just like a grain of sand to them. Simon couldn't let the sacrifices of so many people be in vain, so he took a risk and directed the ship downwards. He decided to drill into the core of this sea area. There was a layer surrounding the core, but it would be disrupted if approached by a strong energy source. Knowing this was quite risky, but for now, it was the only way. Simon collapsed because he used too much power. Roman 6 Rai felt useless when he couldn't use his power, but Simon's guinea pig entered Roman 6 Rai's cockpit and unleashed a considerable amount of energy. The drills were energized to launch towards the core, but the pressure here was too great, so they needed reinforcement. Kai-Tan decided to turn his robot into a drill to charge in. He took a kiss from Duco for motivation and then embraced the drill for a suicide mission. He broke through the outer layer, but his robot was also compressed. However, Kai-Tan wasn't dead because he still had a small robot inside, and at this moment, he awakened his hidden power to shine one last time as he destroyed the core with his own hands and perished in the explosion. As the core exploded, energy burst out. The moon ship absorbed it to complete its transformation. The entire moon ship could now confidently surface to confront the two ships waiting for them here. The first ship that fired was immediately dealt with by just a glass throw. The second one tried to fire back and caused damage to the robot. The alien race realized Simon was still pressing forward, sacrificing more comrades. They would show him the consequences of the power that would bring destruction to this universe. They believed Simon would cause people from many spaces to fight and annihilate each other, turning this universe into nothingness. Simon and the king knew this was true, but there was another truth. Naya was waiting for him, and he could turn Earth into a place for humans to live eternally. He was still determined to move forward, so the ship was brought into the space gate and would attack by surprise. The king had locked targets in all spaces, so whoever aimed at whichever one could fire. They fired at all gates and managed to pull the ship back, allowing Simon to finish it off with the drill. Nai's projection disappeared, and now they could go directly to where she was being held captive. But suddenly, the alien caused them to fall into the multiverse. Only the guinea pig and the king remained conscious, and he also encountered the mastermind. He was called Anti, and he saw a warrior like the king now reduced to just a biological computer. The guinea pig had evolved into a human and tried to attack him, but becoming human also caused it to be sent into the multiverse. Seeing no more threats, Anti left. In the multiverse, Simon was awakened by Kamina. He gave Simon a choice between two versions of himself, one who always lived with his head held high or a coward. Simon naturally chose the proud Kamina from before and then bid farewell to him and the comrades who had sacrificed themselves. As others saw Simon flying in the sky, they also awakened and regained consciousness. At this moment, Naya was having her body absorbed by Anti when her ring began to glow. She held the ring forward, and from it, Simon and the robot emerged. He saved Naya, and then everyone merged with the robot to fight a final battle with the universe's boss. He admitted that Simon's army was the first group of humans to come this far. He summoned a robot to fight alongside him, while the king also had his own body. The king revealed that in this space, they could materialize anything as long as it was acknowledged. He had an epiphany and admitted that his daughter and Roman 6 Rai had done very well. Both sides engaged in battle, with Anti seemingly having the upper hand at first. Duco shot at his head, revealing it to be Anti's mother planet. He was also a human who had awakened powers like them, but they realized this power would harm the universe, so they stopped evolving and merged their minds into one entity to eradicate all humans who posed a threat to the entire universe. The two fought and somehow ended up back on Earth. As Anti was about to touch Earth, Simon and his comrades immediately pulled him back. The battle between the two sides was witnessed by all of humanity on Earth. Anti gathered 2 galaxies and threw them towards Simon's group. The king separated himself to take the full impact and then dispersed himself into energy to power Simon. The energy exceeded the capacity, making the robot and Simon fight even more fiercely. Simon continuously blocked all attacks and wanted him to remember this drill, a drill made from those who had fallen to build a future for the new generation, a drill that would lead to the future. He then repeatedly detached from the large armor with Roman 6 Rai, and Roman 6 Rai threw the head for Simon to make the finishing move. Anti was defeated, and he wanted Simon to keep his word and protect this universe. The group was then separated and congratulated by many other dimensions. Simon realized their kind still existed in many different dimensions. Upon returning, Naya and Simon held their wedding ceremony, but she disappeared right after, as she was originally created by Anti, and Simon had anticipated this. Simon decided to hand over the key to Gim Mai, and from now on, the younger generation would take over his leadership while he would return to being a minor as before. 20 years passed. Ro-Si had become the leader and developed the entire world. Duco returned to teach children on Danai Island, and Gim Mai was now mature enough to use the robot Simon left behind. Roman 6 Rai became the commander of the moon ship. Simon retired to seclusion and placed his faith in the next generation, the generation that would connect with their siblings in other dimensions. And with this, the movie ends.